Dogs and worms, baby.
What happened with Dad? Did he get that job?
Advertising people are perverts.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Charlie. This will be my full Rick and Morty Season 9, Episode 5 video. There are a whole bunch of Easter eggs, references, and deep cuts going all the way back to Season 1 of the show. All because they finally brought Snowball back since that Season 1 Lawnmower Dog episode. It's been a hot minute since we've seen him. The episode title was Jer Bud, which is a reference to the movie Air Bud, and also the phrase Your Bud because it's the return of Snowball, formerly slave name Snuffles from Season 1, who was the family dog up to that season. During that episode, Lawnmower Dog, Rick created the device to make him hyper-intelligent, and he and the other dogs rebel against their masters, eventually leaving to colonize the other dimension where they could live as apex predators of that place, more like humans. Cut to now, and in the time they've been gone, they've now since fallen into a lot of the same terrible cultural problems that humans did, creating their own version of the same animal slavery that Snowball protested against during Lawnmower Dog when they breed a race of their own humans to keep as pets. And probably the bigger surprise of the episode is that Morty does not go on a big moral tirade against Snowball like he would normally do when he feels like Rick is out of line. But Rick does point out that he is proud of Morty, as Morty taking his moral stance so many times over all the different seasons often leads to even worse things happening, like last week's episode. Like it literally just happened in last week's episode. This is the first time that Snowball has come back into the story since that Season 1 episode, Lawnmower Dog. The show has gone on long enough now that they can mine pretty much any small detail or unresolved plot point from previous seasons for future episodes, and I am sure they'll do more of this across the seasons in the future. 100 years of Rick and Morty. The cold open starts with Jerry trying to get a job at another ad agency. It's a bit of a Mad Men parody, the way they use it in the episode with a couple of cameo scenes. The last job he had was at the Galactic Government several seasons ago, which he also got fired from. He usually gets fired from all of his jobs, so even though they make it seem like he's going to have this job for a little while this season, I would not be surprised if in a future season he also winds up getting fired for some reason, some hilarious way. Morty also later makes fun of this, saying that the family forgot that he was still trying to get a job because it's been so long they figured he had just given up completely, and Rick makes fun of him by saying he's totally unnecessary to the family's survival and provides them nothing. He's totally useless, so he doesn't need to get a job. It would be meaningless to them. But we actually find out at the end of the episode this isn't totally true. He doesn't want Jerry to get a job because he likes having Jerry around, and he likes Jerry as a friend, which they've implied in previous episodes, but Rick does not like to admit it publicly very often. This is another Space Beth episode. She's hanging out with the family this week, eating the same exact cereal as Beth, which feels like both a reference to their ongoing side relationship that the family knows about, like the extra level of twincest, because she's kind of getting it on with herself. Like, take the Game of Thrones, House of the Dragon twincest jokes to like the next level. Also a bit of a dig at Beth being super narcissistic, getting it on with herself. And also a reference to them both having the same preferences because they are to the same person, so of course they would like the same food. Space Beth offers him worry worms that eat all of his worries, then die in a couple of hours, which also explains why she's so chill all the time, saying that she's in the middle of them right now. So all these episodes, all these seasons, she's always been so chill because she's always been on worms for a while. Rick also gets really excited at the thought of breakfast drugs because of course he would, and he takes Morty on a week-long trip to visit Snowball's dimension, the new world that he went to at the end of Lawnmower Dog. When he says, this is what it feels like to have friends, that's also another reminder that Morty almost has zero friends. There was one last week that might have been his friend, but Morty accidentally killed him, they implied. And they also made a joke about most of his friends, or people you would call friends, being adults that Beth was really weirded out by and commented on.
I don't like how many adult friends Morty has.
Is this what it feels like to have friends?
Wouldn't know.
Morty has had temporary relationships with younger people in the past, but like he doesn't have a lot of young, core friends that you would normally think of. When he arrives on Snowball's planet, he's in a mech similar to the one from Season 1, but they explain that they've upgraded Rick's design since then, so like they have more advanced, more powerful mechs. All the statues behind him depict him holding the dead body of his fallen friend. Rob Paulsen came back as the voice of Snowball from that Season 1 episode, and all the dogs, like I said, have similar Lawnmower Dog-style mechs, and their park has a statue to Snowball in his mech stepping through Rick's portal from that Season 1 episode into their new dimension, like the very end of that episode. Everything on this world is basically like a parody of a human thing from the real world, but in dog form. There's a hot dog vendor that sells chicken chews, dog chews. The Latin phrase on the building reads, what sounds like can is In the newspaper, one is reading says, who let the Mups out, which is a reference to the song Who Let the Dogs Out, and foreshadowing the whole rebellion with the Mups in the main course in this episode, the human race that they breed and keep as pets. All their briefcases are bone-shaped. Morty meets one of the other Mupp creatures then. Snowball explains why they did it. They wanted their own subspecies of pets like dogs on planet Earth that normal humans would keep. And it becomes super weird with Morty struggling through the episode to try and not question it because he loves Snowball as a friend so much. He was so precious to him. He mentions a sniff conference. There's a college they have in New Dog City, their capital here. The roads all have special dog-friendly grass crossings like animal crossings so they don't burn their feet on the hot pavement. But also they walk around in mechs and there's like a street sign, like the walker sign is a mech sign. So that also doesn't really make sense. There are giant outdoor toilets all over the place. They use smartphones. And he says they've updated Rick's mech design since season 1, which explain all the weapons at the end of the episode with their big rebellion. At Snowball's house, the guard dogs at his house have little dog houses that they're stationed in, and the front gate is a high-tech doggy door. Even though it wasn't a direct parody of the actual White House, it felt like they were going for White House energy and White House vibes with the actual mansion. He has a dog butler that offers them water bowls of hose water instead of champagne glasses. This other dog in the beret is General Butch, who also appeared in that season 1 episode. He mentions the pool because Morty is big on pools this season because of the family's pool they recently put in. Also, dogs love the pool most of the time. Most dogs. My entire life, I've always had labs as pets, and labs are water dogs. They love getting in the water. No matter where they are, they will find water to get into. When he makes the joke about them not talking politics, that just feels like a reference to awkward family get-togethers where half the family hates the politics of the other half and everybody just winds up shouting at each other about politics the whole time. Which they kind of wind up doing in this episode a little bit, but like I said, Morty says at the end of the episode he didn't take the moral stance that he would normally take, and he kind of doesn't, even though they do have a bit of a rebellion. Then a couple of the creatures that they call the main course try to attack them. Theirs seem as if they're more monkey-like early humanoid forms, basically a free-living society of humans that evolved on this planet before Snowball and the dogs wound up here, as we learn later. Like Snowball says that they found these proto-humans when they first arrived. They wind up using this for the Dances with Wolves reference later, Morty saying it's like Dances with Wolves because he's the character who tried to help the natives out in that movie, and these creatures, the main cores, are the natives of this planet, and the dogs are like the humans in Dances with Wolves, the interlopers trying to steal their land. But basically the same thing that played out in season 1 with the dogs all rising up and rebelling against humans is now playing out on this planet again, but with now the dogs being rebelled against. All the dogs now are doing the same bad things that humans did that they were complaining about when Snowball rebelled. He makes a bunch of eugenics references to like physical deformities, selective breeding, also references to humans in real life breeding dogs. They feel like this episode was a big indictment on puppy mills too.
Gonna run and tell your grandfather I'm doing eugenics?
As he takes Morty to the factory where they create the Mups and Me, which feels like a Mac and Me reference, the movie. While this is going on, the B story is Jerry interviewing for his new job with Bob at the ad agency in the city. They make a lot of references to Mad Men through that whole storyline, especially them being perverts and like throwing darts at the interns, like all the things that you would see them do on the Mad Men show. If you did not watch that, it was a fantastic show though. So part of the idea here with Jerry being on the worms, being super cool, impressing Bob here, is he's meant to feel like Don Draper from Mad Men, like the ultra cool ad agency guy. As part of this, Jerry is also being ultra honest about things on his application, saying that he does a lot of dimension hopping, like his multi-dimensional adventures with Rick, which Bob is actually impressed by because, as Rick implies later, ad agency people are perverts and they're kind of into this kind of chaotic lifestyle that Jerry has. So normally they'd be worried about Jerry not getting the job, but because they're so crazy, Jerry did get the job. Like, don't worry, he actually got the job because they're all nuts. They use the interstitial cards to show you how much the worms have been used up, like he's at 10% level at the beginning here. By the time he reaches 100%, all the worms are meant to die and leave him. The Nip Slip vodka name and the CEO being named Nip Slip just feel like random funny jokes, like Mad Men style jokes, and the idea that they're all perverts. Bob is also a really big vodka fan and an alcoholic, which Jerry later uses to help him get the job, who then invites him to the dinner with the CEO, setting up the second half of the B story in the episode. On his way back home, he sings Rebecca Black's Friday in the car, bit of a deep cut, and he reveals that he's taken all of the worms and they're 20% full now. So Jerry is full of worms, which they use for dog jokes later in the episode too. Like your dog in real life gets worms, has to be taken to the vet to get dewormed, which they use for a big bit later in the episode. Rick also reveals he knows all about the worms and is actually a little impressed because he doesn't know exactly what's going to happen. Like, this is going to be wild. Let's watch what happens. And I also love these little details in the background too, how lazy Rick is, that he portals a couple of feet from his workbench in the garage to talk to them instead of just walking for like 2 seconds. That's how lazy he is. To be fair, if I had portals like Rick's, I would probably do stuff like that all the time too. The only reason why Rick doesn't do this all the time everywhere, like why doesn't he just portal everywhere he wants to go, is because portal fluid is actually pretty hard to make. It's not infinite. At the Mupp and Me factory, there's Adopt Today signs, which is a reference to real-world dog adoption, which is very common. Like I said, they basically patterned this after like a typical puppy mill, which is a very, very bad place for dogs, a very cruel place. He has a Muppuccino dog name for what looks like a Starbucks coffee, like there's a Starbucks logo on it. On the vending machine, the baby bottle formula for the Mupps says hypoallergenic, premium organic, non-GMO, which I think is just a reference to people in real life feeding their pets ultra premium, ultra expensive food and liquids. Like, people spend a lot of money on their pets. Morty sees this horrifying conveyor belt where they're rolled off the line and being modified genetically. There's a little tablet where you can actually say what you want from them, and they will modify them genetically right in front of your eyes, and it seems like it actually hurts them a lot, like they really, really do not like it. They play this funny promo video that's a parody of Reels making dog breeding seem good when they're actually quite grotesque and cruel, with one of the Mupps giving birth to a second-generation Mupp, which already is kind of horrifying the way they portray it. Then they steal the baby from the mother, lock her in a prison cage, which she's horrified by, and ship the baby off to a new owner using a system of tubes. So the whole system feels like an indictment on puppy mills. They even try giving one to Morty, who is horrified, like it looks like Morty's soul has died and left his body. It also seems like it's born with some kind of genetic condition or like super sick, or it has a disease of some kind, which is common of puppy mills.
Non-genetic modifications can also be made once your Mupp is born.
When he goes back to Snowball's house and tries to leave, you notice he's got dog treats by the bed. The bed is a dog bed, like a giant dog bed. There's a golden fire hydrant meant to be a reference to having golden toilets in your house. On the wall is a painting of Snowball in his mech with the other dogs stepping through that portal that Rick made at the end of season 1 to this new dimension when they first came here. Morty then tries to bail, and Snowball gets upset with him, complaining that he's being canceled for performing eugenics experiments and is worried Rick is going to retaliate against him. Like, why am I being the bad guy? We're just doing what humans did, what you did, which he doesn't realize, or maybe he does realize, is terrible. Like, he is being a terrible dog. Which Morty also makes the jokes later, he's been a very bad dog. They kind of did this during the season 1 episode too, where like the episodes both have maximum dog puns. Morty tries to blow it off, ignoring it because he wants to stay friends with Snowball, implying that he will return again in the future, but Snowball seems like he's going to kill him, and it seems like they try to hijack his limo and actually kill him. So Morty runs for it and winds up in a Mupp slum and is attacked by the main cores, who start to eat the Mupps and then take him to their base camp in their rebellion. While this is happening, Rick and the Beths take Jerry to her dealer to get rid of the worms, which are crawling all over his body visibly now, and he's starting to trip big time. Like, he's getting super weird. He's at 40% level. They make a joke about harvesting Jerry for worms and making a ton of money off of it, which they pay off later during the post-credit scene when Jerry runs the ad agency account at their Mad Men-style agency with the other dimension, because they wind up giving all the worms to the dogs in the other dimension, making a ton of money off of it. Turns out worms are big business on that dog planet. Which is also meant to be another joke payoff on dogs in real life having worms. Like, oh, take him to the vet, he's got worms again. You can definitely tell there are a lot of people on the Rick and Morty crew that made this episode who are dog owners and dog fans. At the end of the episode, in the credits, they also have a title card with them specifically thanking their dogs in real life with pictures of their dogs in real life. We get our next guest star, Stephen Root, who you probably recognize. He was on Widow's Bay, like literally right now as the episodes are dropping. Fantastic series. Stephen Root is amazing at all the things he does. Anytime he pops up somewhere, it is hilarious. This time he's playing one of the dealer's henchmen who try to kill them. Rick also reminds Space Beth that killing this dealer won't be a problem because of the multiverse being infinite. There are literally universes out there where there are trees that grow new dealers. They also reveal that at a certain point, Jerry's worms will cause Jerry to start feeding on other people's discomforts too, which they pay off with the dinner and the CEO later in a couple moments on the train. When Rick says Jerry is going to be great at it, it's because one of Jerry's superpowers is making people and himself uncomfortable. So part of the idea is that the worms basically try to make Jerry do all the things that will make him the most uncomfortable so that the worms can continue to feed off of Jerry. Beth reveals she took him to improv classes and he tries to perform for the people on the subway car. It's super cringy, making them uncomfortable, making Jerry uncomfortable, so the worms start to feed off more as he maxes out his anxiety. So the worms have Jerry basically doing all these crazy things until he gets to the CEO dinner. Space Beth also makes a random joke about having long COVID, which is an actual thing in real life that some people do have. Back on the dog planet, Morty meets the main core leader, references Dances with Wolves. In that movie, he's referencing Kevin Costner's character, who tried to help the natives, but also admits that he hasn't seen the movie and doesn't actually know the plot, like he just knows it from the poster. Snowball's troops find them and then try to kill them. Their leader dies in Morty's arms with her dying breath, tasks him with helping them, so reluctantly agrees to lead their rebellion back into the city against Snowball. When he climbs into the mech, this also feels like a reference to his recent design from Fortnite when he's inside the mech. Then calls Snowball all the exact names that Snowball falsely accused Morty of calling him just a couple minutes ago. Back on Earth, Jerry goes to the CEO dinner and it gets super crazy, Bob noticing the worms crawling under his skin, and Jerry begins making everyone and himself way more uncomfortable, insulting the CEO, calling him bald. Stephen Root also plays the CEO character too, so he has double roles in the episode.
I'd sign the paperwork right now. I would definitely, but you need to meet the board in New York.
Jerry literally tells them that he eats fear, which the worms actually do, so it's actually happening right now, but he's crushing the meeting because they're perverts, as Rick says later, so it totally works, like they're totally vibing with all the crazy stuff that Jerry does. Orders them to take him to meet their board to close the deal with Bob's very pregnant wife, whose water breaks. Jerry delivers the baby, which she gets super into along with everyone else, like Jerry is a god to them for a couple of minutes at least until the worms leave him, destroys the controls, crashing the plane, and the wife names the baby girl Jerry after him. Maybe there'll be a slight reference in the background to this in some future episode, like the baby girl Jerry. While this is going on, Morty's foursome main course has an all-out war against Snowball's men in the city. This is like Game of Thrones level House of the Dragon scale. We literally just had House of the Dragon Season 3 Episode 1 with a major battle on this scale. When they reach the Mupp and Me factory, the guard dog is watching Dog Kabuki with a giant tennis ball, and they free all the Mupps, giving them weapons, but hilariously, they wind up not being very developed and killing a bunch of friendlies, which also kind of happened during the House of the Dragon episode with Sheep Stealer. Kind of funny that things like that happened on both episodes at the same time. When they assault Snowball's mansion, Morty faces off with him in their mechs. They make a bunch of dog puns, and Snowball reveals, like I said, when he was sent to this new planet by Rick, the humanoids, the main course, already lived there, and Snowball thought that this was a terrible place, not the paradise that he made it seem like when Morty came to visit him. Destroys his mech, holds him up by the scruff of his neck, getting everybody to stop fighting, and they do have a funny pause here, while he's speechifying to everyone, while he's scratching Snowball's back, and Snowball is super into it, super loves it, even though they were just yelling at each other, trying to kill each other. So for a little while in this last part of the episode, Snowball starts acting more like a real dog when he was still just a regular dog with the family. We go back to the CEO in the crashed plane making a joke about doing a ton of blow in the 70s and this being similar to what's happening right now, which is like classic Mad Men era, late 60s, early 70s, with a lot of blow happening and a lot of really crazy stuff they did, which Rick also comments on later, like, oh yeah, they're all like this. That's why Jerry got the job, because they're so crazy. Jerry then reaches 100% worm level as the worms start leaving him, like they've multiplied to the point where they're leaving him and they're going to be taken into the bodies of the other people who treat it like this weird cult situation. They officially give him the job at the ad agency, so like he's sealed the deal, he's gotten the job, as Rick and the Beths arrive in Space Beth's ship. Then the worms start leaving Jerry and he grows more anxious as they're leaving him, and Space Beth figures out because they're coming for Rick, because Rick is more afraid of Jerry getting a job than anything else that anybody else, even Jerry, was afraid of in the episode. Turns out one of Rick's greatest fears is Jerry actually getting a real job, and they just imply it's because he actually likes Jerry and likes having him around and doesn't want him to go away, even if it's only during weekdays for part of the day. It doesn't seem like Jerry works that much. Rick agrees to turn the worms into an actual business with the ad agency on the account if Jerry is allowed to work on the account. So this is basically going to be Jerry's job for like the next however many episodes. We'll see how long he keeps this job before he gets fired again. Space Beth mentioning Sweet Marie was the dealer that they also killed recently. Back in the dog world, Morty and Snowball go to his panic room, and it's basically designed to be a glorified tiny dog house, like a classic dog toys feeders, a little false grass, a hydrant for relieving himself. So the idea is that Snowball's comfort is going back to his life when he was still with the family, being more like an actual dog. When Morty starts talking to Snowball about how dogs and humans evolved, he gets it completely wrong because Morty is terrible at school and rarely goes and is not great at studying, which they use for plot in previous seasons because Rick keeps pulling him out of school for adventures, so he's rarely at school, so he's very far behind all the other kids.
And we're gonna incept the idea in his brain to give you A's in math, Morty.
But one of the grand messages of the episode is that absolute power corrupts absolutely, and that any race is destined to fall into the same traps and bad behaviors that humans did if they eventually rise to power like the dogs did. Rick arrives to pick Morty up because it's been a week, like the week of him visiting is over, and he's impressed that Morty didn't take his typical moral stand despite the Civil War, and Rick also pets him like a dog and says good boy, as if Morty is his pet. Then their solution for dealing with the aftermath of the Civil War on their planet is to give all of the creatures, including the Mancors and the Mups, worms. So like the dogs, Mancors, and Mups all have worms on this planet, and Rick is making money off of it, and the ad agency that Jerry works for is doing it, and he is working on the account. This is what they use the post-credit scene for this time. Jerry in his office at the ad agency on a call with the clients in the other dimension. Like, oh, everybody's super chill because they're on worms. Everybody has worms, like dogs in real life having worms problems. When you look around Jerry's office here too, he's also got a picture of his Apple's pitch from season 2, one of his previous jobs, very few jobs that he's had on the series, and a picture of the family on the wall with Space Beth, but Rick is also cut out of the picture, like he's half cut out, implying that he was like in the middle of walking away from the picture as Jerry was taking it. But all the carpet, like the design of the room here, and his clothing are modeled after Mad Men and Don Draper. So like when Bob steps in saying, they're throwing darts at the interns, come on, have some fun, this also feels like a Mad Men joke. While the episode was airing, they also released another sneak peek at that President Curtis spinoff show that's going to be airing later this year. I don't know that I'll do separate videos for like all those episodes, but if there's a really big demand for them, I'll do at least the first episode. So if you really want me to do episode videos for that, just let me know in the comments. Everybody post all your reactions in the comments below, and if you think you spotted any Easter eggs or references in the episode that I didn't talk about in the video, just write them below in the comments. My full episode 6 video will post next week after I'm done with my House of the Dragon episode video, so make sure to enable alerts for my channel so you don't miss that. I will still be doing weekly Rick and Morty episodes. It'll just take me a little bit longer to get the episodes out now that House of the Dragon is back. Everybody click here for that new episode. I'll update the link as soon as I post that, and click here for all my other Rick and Morty episodes. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.